So I was told not to prepare any slides. So I didn't prepare any slides with the goal of keeping it interactive and having a conversation. But I still intend to show you a bit of the setup that I have. But first, I would like to start with what I did wrong when I was a TA. So at the time, I was teaching exercise sessions during my PhD. And so the very first sessions that I had, I was even a student, sorry, that was even before the PhD. I used the Blackboard because it was a math-oriented lecture. And so I used the Blackboard and I sent students to the Blackboard, even tell them, you know, you go to the Blackboard and correct the exercise. So then I realized after a few weeks, there were less and less people coming to the class because they were scared of being sent to the Blackboard. So this was my very first experience. And so when I saw that this happened already during the semester, I completely changed everything. And I thought, how can I do it differently? And this is when I started doing slides, PowerPoint slides. And I stopped sending students to the Blackboard. I stopped volunteering students. So I only asked, does anybody volunteer? And if nobody volunteers, I just do it myself. With PowerPoints, you can also do karaokes in like PowerPoint karaokes, which is also a very good exercise. But basically, the moment that I switched to PowerPoint and that sort of presentations, then suddenly in the next semester, I had a full class, and absolutely all the students were coming to the session. So that was my very first experience more than 10 years ago. And then some other aspects that I considered so pre-online was that when the lecture was in the lecture hall, I decided to record the lecture. So it was in order to be prepared for situations in which the recordings might be needed. Then it was a compromise to make because then the problem if you record the lecture is that the students no longer have an incentive to come. So a lot of them start saying, okay, I'm just going to watch the lecture offline. So in the end, I still record it because I think it's still the best service that I can do to the students. And then it's their own decision if they come or if they do not come. Back then, we used Piazza as the main interface to communicate with the students or email, it depending on the preferences of the TA team. And then came 2020. And so in 2020, it caught us by surprise that we switched online. And then my story is a bit similar to what Laurent was saying a bit earlier, is that I started reusing the recordings that I had exactly for that purpose. So I started reusing the recordings, and every week you would post this for the students. And one other reason why I used the recording at first is that I thought the time that I do not spend in the lecture, I can use it to interact directly with the students. So we set up a platform called Mattermost. I will show you a screenshot a bit later. And so the Mattermost is a bit like Slack. It's a direct chat, and all the students were on Mattermost, and so we interacted directly. In one of the two courses that I taught, all the students were there and used it very actively. And especially before the exam, so usually 2-3 weeks before the exam, suddenly you have a rush of questions on Mattermost. And so I spent hours there directly interacting with the students, which was very pleasant. And in the other TA team, they used it a bit less, but it was because the TA team was more actively interacting with the students directly. So the students did not, or felt a bit less the need to directly speak with me. So I kind of saw the both at the same time, two ways that it was catching on with the students. So what I did then at the end of the semester, I also thought it's a very similar story to Laurent. I thought, how can I do something better? And then I had a few months to prepare. So the first thing I did is that I purchased some equipment, a green screen, some lights that you can see. I will show you later, but I basically have these projectors that I use to make it look not too bad on the screen. And I thought, as an example, why don't I do it like the BBC weather forecast people? Meaning that they stand in front of their big screen, the green screen as well, and then they move. Let me show you maybe how this works. So I just need to switch the setup because I need to move my computer if I stand, just to give you an impression of how it looks like. So I basically use the virtual background setup of Zoom. So let me use this, yes. So the first thing I wanted to show you here is that the lectures I teach, so it's usually 100, 200 students. So the biggest one is Big Data for Engineers with 250. That was what I promised to you. So that's a screenshot of Mattermost to see. For data protection reasons, I cannot show you a screen with actual names and conversations, but this is pretty much what it looks like. And now just to give you an impression of the style that I decided to have. So as I said, it's a bit in the style of the weather forecast. It means that I'm standing in front of my slides exactly like this. I have also this instrument here that allows me to move back and forth, and so I'm able like this to interact. And the nice thing about being in front of the screen is that I can directly show right here. I can also get out of the way if I want them to look at the screen. So this is the setup that I have. So I also put the recording on the recordings on YouTube because I have the feeling it's easier for the students to be able to directly see it on their smartphones without too many steps in order to be able to see the recordings. So I post them there. So yes, that was what I've been doing now for since September 2020, and then I use the same setup in this semester right now. Also the same. So these are similar ideas. I also have a TA who moderates the lecture. It means that if the students ask questions. By the way, the slides are totally unrelated. These are just the slides of my course. So you should just not pay any attention to that. So I have a TA who moderates the lecture and who answers the questions on the chat and interrupts me. I give them the instruction to really interrupt me even in the middle of a sentence if students have questions so that I can answer them. And then I have a lot of interaction, I feel, in the students. So they do not hesitate to interrupt. They ask the questions on the chat and it works quite well. So other aspects that I have in this course is that I use. Let me stop and share a different screen. So let me stop here. I wanted to also show you something else that I use. Not that right now. So this is the YouTube recording, and this is what I use a lot. So it's a clicker app, which is done right here by the LED team at ETH. It works really, really well, and it allows you in the middle of the lecture to stop and ask a question, and then they will answer it. It works a bit like this. So you see the number of votes. You can see the votes that are there. I usually add also, that's also for the purpose of being a bit, because it's such a hard time for the students and to also give a bit of a distraction, I often squeeze one non-serious answer in there, just to keep an atmosphere a little lighter. So I use it a lot. Every week I have 1 or 2 questions. I start the lecture with a rehearsal of the previous week. And then at the end, what I do is that I will show you, I have the same question that I copy every week, always the same one at the end. I ask them how much of the lecture they understood. And my goal here is that above 80% understood. So most of them understood more than 80% of what I'm saying. It's possible in some weeks that it's a bit tougher, and then it goes down to 50%. But at least I get a temperature every week of if they are following or not. And then I can slow down, I can accelerate. So I adjust the rhythm on the lecture. If I see in a week a lot of them understood barely more than 50%, then I will maybe take 10 or 20 minutes in the week after that in order to come back to the topic. So I feel the temperature almost every week in that way. Some other aspect of the way that I teach is that I try to be in the slides, in the sense that I have barely any text on the slides. I try to have just images or sketches. but I just speak. That's also not to distract, to split the students' attention between reading on the slides and listening to what I'm saying. So that's another thing that I'm doing. Something else that I like to do that's more on the style of teaching, that's not necessarily related to online, but it's the idea that I do what I call sharded teaching. It means that I try to shard all the knowledge that I want to transfer to the students. I try to shard it in as little pieces as possible, as many little pieces as possible. And I try to sandbox each one of these pieces in a digestible way. I know that it's one of several ways of doing that. I know that some people want to do the opposite of that for very good reason as well, because they want, on the contrary, to put the burden a bit more on the students to figure out how to cut the pieces and digest them. But I have the feeling that when I shard, that's what works best, I find, for the interaction. Something that I've been trying as well a bit in tiny steps, because it's not so, it's a lot of work to implement, is productive failure, which is by Manu Kapoor. It's the idea of trying to make them fail and have quizzes that are not necessarily entirely precise. So what I've been trying to do is that, especially for ungraded quizzes, to make them a bit imprecise, not entirely completely perfect, in such a way to expose them to thinking a bit more. But then at the exam, we are absolutely precise, and I'm very, very picky on the questions. And this is why I had this other screen that I wanted to show you, which is a document that I prepared for my TAs, where you can pretty much see everything that you're supposed to do, not to do. So I did it with primary school level questions to show the point, but I have a set of rules that I enforce for the exams. So we've been doing the exams on computers for a while now, and it works really great. The LED team is very, very supportive and very well organized. So we've been doing that for a while now, and that works well. Regarding the exercises, I like a sandboxed approach, in the sense that it's also this idea of sharding, that every exercise has a single purpose, and then you try to protect, to avoid any distractions from outside hypotheses. So just focus on a specific task that you want to train the students on. So this is mostly what I wanted to say. A few more concluding remarks, maybe. Is that at ETH, the students see that you care. That was my experience when I was a TA. If you invest time with them, if you put that time and that effort in order to prepare, as a TA, it was the exercises, as a lecturer, it's the teaching. They see that you care, and that's highly rewarding at ETH to invest the time with the students for that. As I said, also a bit of humor helps a bit. I do it a bit in the clicker questions. I also have, I think I don't do it on purpose, but I have a bit of a humor on myself that I also try to not be too serious. I'm still serious, but not too serious, in order also to be more approachable and have some interaction, to lower the bar and give an incentive to communicate. So that's what I wanted to say. And if you have any questions, we can have a bit of a conversation as well. I kept it a bit shorter to have more time for the questions, if you have any.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting, just to show all the dimensions that you're considering in terms of your teaching. I will ask a question while people have time to think about asking something. You have very large classes, so is that why you chose the range of ways to try and get interaction with the students? Because I imagine it's quite difficult if you're dealing with 250 in a class.
Yes, so the number of students, it's a topic on its own. So how do you scale the teaching, basically? So one of the ways is, first, the TAs are there. So the fact that you have a TA team already provides a way that one TA has maybe 20, 25 students. So that's already a way to scale. Another one was the computer exams. The computer exams were also one of the way that we dealt with these numbers. Now in the class, not everybody comes, right? So the fact that there's the recordings has an impact on the number of people who are actually in the class. So I think that when I have 200 or 250 students, usually in the class I have something like 50. So the first day of the semester, of course, you have maybe 150, 200, but then it diminishes a bit, and then you maybe have 50, 60 left in the class. And then it stays rather steady, and online it's roughly the same. I think I have roughly the same numbers. It depends on the weeks, it depends on the total size of the class. And I have the feeling that, so one of the aspects of having a large class is how do you get the students to speak? How do you make the students ask questions? Because a lot of them can be shy, especially if they are in the bachelor studies, they don't have so much exposure in speaking in public. So for example, you need to be very careful when somebody asks a question or tries to answer one of your questions and they give a wrong answer. You have to be very careful to always have a constructive feedback, to always say, even if it's wrong, there's still a little bit of right in there. And so you can always focus on what's right in order to make them speak. And it's part of their education to expose them to being less shy and to speaking in public. So in this respect, it's this sort of things that I use in order to simulate the interaction. I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question or if this was the intent of your question.
No, that was very interesting to hear. Are there any questions from the participants on this particular topic?
I have a question. I was just wondering, I started using the Zoom poll rather than Clicker. So I used to use Clicker, but then I found Zoom just so much quicker than Clicker. I was wondering what your choice was, if you found Clicker to give you some more options.
That's also something that I considered. I consider the fact that it's slower to be a feature. Because it's a way to give them a bit of to breathe during the lecture. You know, like we start the lecture and then even if there's 20 seconds or 30 seconds of silence, then I think it's very good because it's a time to rest a bit their brain. So this is why I actually like the fact that it's a bit slower. So that's the main reason. I think maybe it's also because the Clicker app is supported by the LED team, and so whenever there is something, I know that they are here to help. And I already exchange a lot of emails with them, and they are very supportive. And that's also one of the reasons. It's basically made right here at ETH, and so that's my thinking basically with this.
So thank you very much. And that also, you've also given an idea of how you started when you first started teaching and the evolution along the road. And now we're on the online situation and keeping students engaged. Is there anything that you would ideally like to do better, or is it for you important that we go back to face-to-face?
I will probably switch to a more hybrid approach. I will probably try to reuse everything that we've learned so far. I'm not sure exactly in what form, but I'd probably consider live streaming the lectures or something like that. That's what's on my mind at the moment. So not just share the recordings, but also have the students who are not in the lecture hall also here. And so I'm considering these things to learn from what we've been doing here.
Thank you. Now, so we have 5 minutes left, which gives us the opportunity to ask everybody, all of the three speakers, some questions. So if anybody would like to ask Laurent and Eva a question about this. It's been a very interesting discussion to see the different technologies that people use and also the different learning interactions that we've seen in this whole process. Are there any more questions? Julia, do you have a question?
Yeah, I would have a question. And it's about like, the student survey showed that like a lot of students really feel lost at the moment, and even get worse during like this third semester. We have like remote teaching now. And I just wanted to know, I heard out a few points that are really interesting to how to help students to also get like the social interaction they need between underneath students, but also between lecturer and students. And so I wanted to point out this, what are you doing? Or are you aware of that?
Perhaps just something we discussed also, Julia, together, but I didn't mention in my presentation. So what we do, but it's very specific to my lecture, but we happen to have in the middle of the lecture a class-wide project. So we have like 150 students, and all of them, all together, they have to build their own mini internet in this case, because I teach them how the internet works. And so it's great because the internet is by definition a collection of tiny little networks that are interconnected together. And the cool thing here is that the students really, the entire classroom, they need to come together. So typically in normal times, we would organize this kind of like evening where we would have all the students in one classroom, and then they would actually, we would turn on the internet at this moment, and then they would see and start like chatting, and it's typically a nice atmosphere. Sorry. So it's something now with that we keep doing, of course, online, everything online, so we don't have the physical meetings anymore. But if there is any way in the different lectures that everyone has to have a kind of like kind of group-wide or class-wide exercise, it really helps. And also the students' feedback went in that way as well, because then the students are also forced, quote unquote, to talk to people they do not know yet, right? Not only their close friends, and in this case, online is even more important than they make connections. And so we use this online chat room as well to kind of like foster these interactions. So I realize, of course, it's very specific to my lecture because we're teaching about networking, so about communication in the first place. So it does not apply in all the lectures, but yeah, if there is anything that can be inspired by this, I think it's certainly working very well for us, I think.
Thank you.
I can add also a bit to this in the sense that I mentioned the Mattermost platform. And this platform also has the advantage that it's a place where the students can connect and interact, because you can also chat with anybody you want on separate rooms or privately and so on. And so that also gives them a platform where they know everybody else in the class is also here. I completely agree also with the statements that the students are not doing well, or that many students are not doing well. That's also my feeling, my general feeling. That's also why I try in the lecture to be as human as possible, and I think that's also why the interaction is more important than ever. I try to make them forget, basically during the lecture, to distract them enough that they forget about the whole pandemic and the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
One thing, when we were still teaching back, I started in the classroom last fall, but I wanted to have small group discussions with 70 students. And so what we did is we went outside and to be safer, so we weren't so close, and we took off our masks and then had distance and actually talked to each other, and that worked. And one other really interactive thing we do is we have debates, and based on the students' feedbacks, we have included additional debates throughout the lecture, because they really realize that that's where they learn from each other. And having more exchange. However, some students also don't like kind of the forced interaction, but most seem to appreciate it. And then another thing that I've more used with my research team, so not with teaching, but maybe it's something we could think about with teaching, is the platform Gather, because it's highly interactive and it's like a computer game. And so that could even be an option. Like you could have some tasks that you have to go accomplish in Gather. I just was a part of an online conference where they created a huge Gather room with different functions, and it was incredibly attractive, and it actually allowed networking at a virtual conference that I haven't experienced so far yet until just a couple of weeks ago.